Perhaps you have seen the image. It is a tall brutalist form that emerges from the snowy tundra of the Plateau Mountains on a remote Norwegian island. I want to speak for a few moments about the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, which is sometimes called the vault at the end of the world. And not only because several times this week I admit that I fantasized about traveling very far away to some very distant remote place with no Wi-Fi or cell service for a bit of a break from this world. The Seed Vault opened in the year 2008 with the recognition that we, humankind, were standing dangerously close to climate catastrophe. Scientists determined that our natural resources were threatened by extreme weather events, by war, human negligence, and abuse, to the point that nearly half of all plant species on Earth were threatened or endangered, and the future of our global food supply was at grave risk. The vault is a response to this threat. Its stated purpose is to conserve and make crop diversity available for use globally, forever, and for the benefit of everyone. In practice, it serves as a massive storehouse for seed samples from all around the world, including unique varieties of African and Asian and European and South American food samples, from maize and rice and wheat to eggplant and lettuce and potatoes. Today, that vault holds more than 1.3 million seed samples, making it the most diverse collection of food crop seeds in the whole world. Every inch of this place is thoughtfully considered so as to protect those precious seeds from the elements, whether those elements are predators, thieves, or environmental damage. Burying the vault nearly 50 stories underground beneath permafrost and thick rock, the vault, built of waterproof tunnels, operates at a temperature of less than 0 degrees Fahrenheit, so that if the power failed, the seeds would remain at optimal storage temperature. They ensure low moisture levels inside the vault to ensure low metabolic activity, keeping the seeds viable for long periods of time. In case there's a conflict, there is an international treaty that qualifies and maintains the area where this vault stands as a demilitarized zone. You get the picture. My virtual procrastinatory visit to the Norwegian islands this week taught me a good deal about an obviously worthy project that I did not know much about last week. A seed vault, a safe space dedicated to the preservation of the most precious natural resources of our Earth from the threat of permanent erasure. It also helped me understand an obviously worthy project at the heart of today's Torah portion, the building of the Mishkan, a holiness vault, a sacred space dedicated to the preservation of the most precious spiritual resources from the threat of permanent erasure. We tend to read our people's story through the vantage point of its human protagonists, Adam and Eve, Abraham and Sarah, Jacob, Joseph, the brothers, Moses, Miriam, and Aaron. But I think sometimes of the devastation that God must have experienced as the human drama unfolded. Remember that God created every single individual in God's own image through an act of grace, of chesed, of love, endowing us with wisdom, creative capacity, the ability ourselves to love and to be loved. And then God watched as we human beings devolved again and again into competition and corruption, into vitriol and violence. Now, in this parasha, after the Hebrews have suffered hundreds of years of enslavement and abuse, degradation and humiliation, God is well aware of the threats to the most precious human resource, the seeds of a world of human dignity and radical accountability, a world of faith and fraternity, of possibility and peace. And so God makes a daring proposition. Let's not leave it up to chance. In a world in which the Holy One has been again and again and again denied, destroyed, nearly defeated, God asks us not only to imagine, but to build with our very own hands one small space, one container where the most precious resources of all, the dream of a redeemed world, and the people who will hold that dream forever, one precious space where that would be safe from destruction, from defilement, and from danger. Create a sacred space, says God, and I will dwell among you. Like the seed vault, every inch of this space is thoughtfully constructed. Nothing is left to chance. Gold, silver, copper, acacia wood, materials donated by Bnei Yisrael with open and gracious hearts, and ordered precisely according to God's instructions. And when all of those pieces came together, the Mishkan affected, according to the Midrash, a kind of cosmic tikkun, a cosmic healing for all humanity. Now there existed in this world one small corner dedicated to hope and healing, to revivification and renewal, a sacred space for God and for human beings, a space imbued with the task of bringing holiness down from heaven to earth, a space that could hold sacred time in sacred place. Some scholars argue that the transformation of the Mishkan, that desert tabernacle, into the Beit HaMikdash, the temple in Jerusalem, into the Batei Knesset, the sanctuaries that have appeared wherever Jews have lived throughout history, is one of the greatest revolutions in the history of religion and society. For the synagogue, they say, was an entirely new environment for divine service, a type unknown anywhere before. In Jonathan Sachs's words, the synagogue became Jerusalem in exile, the home of the Jewish heart. And here's why that is so radical. It's not just the Mishkan, that desert tabernacle that was imbued with the sacred task of the preservation of the holiest seeds, those needed to repopulate the deforested and dispossessed world, a world too often victim to violence, degradation, and exploitation. It's not just the Mishkan in the desert, and it's not just the temple in Jerusalem. It is every sanctuary, everywhere. You and I have created a seed bank. We may not have thought of it in quite those terms when we came together 21 years ago in that actor's studio on Robertson, or when you joined this community last month, or at any time in between. But I am telling you today that this community, this Beit Knesset, is a spiritual inheritor of that Mishkan. That means that we are here not only to comfort and to support one another, to laugh and pray and weep and eat together. We are here to protect what is most holy in this world. So what I ask you is the precious and precarious spiritual resource of our time. It is compassion, it is curiosity, it is humility, and it is human understanding. It is love, it is hope, and it is joy. And while those values and ideals have been threatened in this world from the moment Cain turned on his brother Abel, in our time, they are now achieving the status of endangered species. And this sanctuary must protect and preserve those endangered species, for they are most holy. A seed out in the wild that's living through extreme pollution, drought, soil degradation is highly likely to become contaminated by the elements. And we, who live most of our time outside the seed bank, outside the sanctuary, are just as likely to become contaminated by the extreme elements of our time. Look, it's happening all around us, even to those who claim to love justice, to strive to do mercy, and to walk humbly in this world. We, in this time of quick-tempered cruelty, have grown callous to one another, as mockery and derision are normalized, even celebrated on every platform and from the highest offices. We have imbibed that cultural degradation. We are becoming shadows of ourselves. We are choosing absolutism at the expense of intellectual honesty, simplicity over complexity, and complicity over courage. We choose the facts that we want to hear, and we ignore everything and everyone else. We have all seen this happen. How easy it has become for some people to dispose of other people at the expense of the ones that they think are most worthy, as if living in a world of human disposability does not diminish the humanity of us all. They say they want peace, but then fan the flames of violent extremism with every screed, with every chant, with every post. We seem oblivious today to the fine line between righteous indignation and just plain indignation. And so we accustom to a culture of anger. We build alliances now around shared grievance. We feed on fear and fury. All, it seems, without realizing that when we turn on one another, we have only become the funhouse mirror image of the very forces that are trying to destroy us. We fully inhabit what Naomi Klein calls the doppelganger culture. I've seen it in our movements for justice. I have seen it as recently as this past week in our universities. We are torn asunder, rife with grandstanding and accusation, with marginalization, with malice. Bastions of learning and connecting and exploration are now coursing with rage and rigidity. Hearts and minds are closed. It is happening all around us. I will not let it happen here. The Mishkan that we have worked so hard to build together, this sacred space, was designed to provide refuge, sanctuary from an increasingly hostile world, to respond to hatred with love. This community was built not to advance unanimity of thinking, not to march in lockstep or reinforce each other's preconceived notions, but to replace stubborn certainty with open-hearted humility and curiosity. Remember that the purpose of the seed bank is to protect biodiversity. We in this place are committed to helping each other grow and learn through celebrating what is different. This sanctuary was built to help us navigate the most difficult moral questions of our time with genuine wonder, to serve as a weekly or daily or hourly reminder that we must turn to one another with grace and compassion and heart. I paid a lot of attention this past week to what's going on outside the walls of our community. I watched what unfolded in the Oval Office yesterday, and this morning, thanks to the New York Times, I got to read the whole transcript in print. If you think it's strange in times like this, with such a storm raging outside, for me to be focusing on the culture of this community and the way that we speak to one another and the way that we turn to one another, then I ask you to consider this. In a time of tsunamis and hurricanes and tornadoes, is that when we abandon the seed bank or when we double down on protecting the most precious resources? Because we know that one day that storm will pass. And we want to make sure that we will be able to plant again the seeds for a different kind of future. So I say to this community on this Shabbat, if you believe that this community is a soft target for your hardened heart, then you can find another home. But if you are here for the promise that this community has always made, that no matter what kind of madness transpires out there, we will always, always turn to one another with compassion and curiosity and care. We will always work to build in this place an oasis of love and justice. We will always strive here to treat one another as images of the divine. Then you are not only welcome here, you are integral to the project of building this Mishkan, this sacred space. Here is the irony of the tundra. The tundra is a cold, harsh biome which bears no trees or vegetation. Its low temperatures and its high altitudes are inhospitable to growth. And yet it is precisely in the tundra, in that most severe region, that those precious seeds are today guarded and protected. So too with us. In the cold, harsh biome of our time, it is hard to imagine that anything pure and holy and beautiful and loving and tender and soft can survive, let alone emerge anew. But we must remember, it is precisely in times like these that we are called to give sanctuary to the most precious ideas. We must protect one another. We must love one another. We must not give up on one another. Shabbat Shalom.